So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me um, for this online webinar slash seminar entitled Enhancing Team Building with DiSC Personality Assessments. I'm Dr. Andrea Johnson, and I will be spending a little bit of time with you all talking about this topic. So, again, I'm so excited that you all could be with me on this evening. So, at any point in time, stop me if you have questions. This is going to go by really fast. Um, but I wanted to at least provide you with an overview. And if any of you are interested in talking further afterwards, I'll stop the recording and we can chat some more if you're interested in hosting some workshops, seminars, or taking a DISC personality assessment. We can talk further about that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. But again, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or place it in the chat and I'll address it. All right. So a little bit about me. For those who are on and don't know me, I'm the owner of A&J Consulting Services, where my slogan is I help my clients look, I had a brain freeze. That's funny. I help my clients realize success in life, leadership, and business. And I work in three distinct areas. That is leadership development, business development, and financial management. As it relates to the business development, I help individuals with creating for-profits and nonprofits. I also work with organizations, for-profits and nonprofits, if they need help with creating budgets, maintaining their personal finances as a business owner while maintaining the finances of the business. I understand that trying to ride the wave of those things because I am a business owner as well, making sure that people understand just the relationship between business credit and your personal finances. Um, that is so important. I work with small business centers, community financial development institutions. I work with banks to provide those services. Um, Also, along with the business development, um, I also I will say this also as it relates to nonprofits, making sure they understand the process of how to prepare to get the funding. So some of those things fall up under the same lines, except for with nonprofits, a lot of times they're not looking at your personal finances, but it's still important to understand because a lot of people are, creating nonprofits with their personal finances. I have a nonprofit too called Bridge, which I'll tell you about in just a moment, which I created many years ago. But so business development, leadership development. I'm also a certified executive coach. So I offer DISC personality assessments and coaching around that. I do staff development retreats. I work with individuals one-on-one to provide coaching and consulting. And then as it relates to the financial management, as I mentioned, I work with businesses or those who want to start businesses, but I also work with people around the personal finance area. So that's the personal credit, money management. So if you're a person that wants to get on track with their finances, how to understand it, how to make sure you are trying to juggle all of these things, because a lot of times all of these things are overlap. So it's not the way I planned it, but that's sort of how my life unfolded with my business. I've been in business for 22 years. I've been doing it full time for 10 years. Um, so I like to tell people I'm my best client because I have to practice what I preach. I've also written several books on the topics. How to start for-profit and nonprofit businesses, how to save thousands on college tuition. I also do training in those areas because that ties into the debt management. Um, how to save thousands on college tuition, written books on social entrepreneurship. I also spent a number of years teaching at the college level. I taught at my alma mater, North Carolina A&T, for many years, and taught at High Point University in a few places in sociology. Um, so yeah, and then with Bridge, my nonprofit, um, I work with organizations. Bridge is a 501(c)(3). We provide scholarships to Thomasville High School students. I am from Thomasville, North Carolina, and so we've been providing scholarships since 2011 to college scholarships to students to various schools. I also work with organizations in the areas of financial literacy, business development, all the things that I do in A&J Consulting Services, but I wanted to be able to partner with organizations that may not have the budget to do so. And because I have a 501c3 to be able to provide those. So I work with Thomasville High School, as I mentioned, colleges and universities. I partner with many organizations to be able to provide these trainings as well for entrepreneurs. So I have courses I've developed, all kinds of things. But that's a little bit about me, just to give you a little bit about my background. So we're going to go ahead and get started though. But again, at the end of the presentation, I have my information. Again, I also have a QR scan code for those that want to scan it in to receive my digital business card. But like I said, feel free to get comfortable, ask questions, unmute yourselves. So what I wanted to do today, I don't know how many of you all have actually heard of the DISC personality assessment or have actually even taken one. But what I will tell you is that I've heard of people say, "Oh, I've taken one and yeah, it's really good." But you really, if you take one, I know with the ones that I offer, the company that I offer them through, that I utilize, when you take the assessment, it gives you a nice detailed report that's many pages. And not only does it outline your personality, but the personalities of others. Now, I will say before I briefly go over this, we are all a little bit of all of them. Nobody is 100% anything. However, a lot of times we do have a dominant trait or a combination or two that dominate. So what I want to do is introduce this to you. And the best way, to be honest, to utilize this is if you're going to have a DISC assessment, is also to have some coaching with it. Is when I'm working with my clients, not only like in my first session, do I go over their report, but I ask them, what are you surprised about? Or are you surprised about anything? But I also, when I'm coaching them, if there's a particular personality that you find you clash with, then each part of your assessment actually has a section on how to communicate effectively, how to deal with conflict. Even gives you insight into yourself. So I'm gonna show you some examples of that today that you can take away with you. All right. So the first personality is a D. Can you all see this okay? Now, can y'all see this okay? It looks good to me, but I want to make sure. Give me a
Yeah.
thumbs. Okay, thank you. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So the first one is D. So the personalities are D, I, S, and C, like DISC. Okay. So I'm going to ask you all to sort of participate a little bit because I'm curious. Once we go over, I'm going to ask you. Some of you all may already know where you might fall, but I'm curious to know. So D, let's start with D first. Dominance. Their priorities are getting immediate results, taking action, challenging self and others. They're motivated by power and authority, competition, winning, and success. Their fears are loss of control, being taken advantage of, vulnerability. You will notice self-confidence, directness, forcefulness, and risk-taking. Their limitations are a lack of concern for others, impatience, and sensitivity. Is there anybody out there that would admit to, I think I'm a little bit of a D? Anyone? I'm checking the chat too. Somebody's a D. I see a box lit up. Okay, let me go to the chat. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your honesty. I got one person said there, okay, a D. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to the next one. And again, as you have thoughts, put them in the chat. So, and let me point this out too. The D's and the I that are at the top, the personalities can be considered active, fast-paced, assertive, dynamic, and bold. Then on the left side, those that fall on the left side, considered questioning, logic focused, objective, skeptical, and challenging. And like I said, you can be a combination, but we're going to go through each of them. And then on the right side, those that fall on the right side, accepting, people focused, empathizing, receptive, and agreeable. And then at the bottom half is considered thoughtful, calm, methodical, moderate paced, and careful. And again, that does not mean that you can't have what we call shading in the different areas, but that's just to give you a breakdown. So we got one D so far on here. All right. Now we have the I's. Now I am an I. I can have D tendencies depending on the situation, but I'm definitely an I. So that stands for influence, and the priorities are expressing enthusiasm, taking action, encouraging collaboration. I have been told that I'm animated. Now, part of that could be, due to my DNA. Now, we could also say that even though we take these different personality tests, you still have to take into account culture, your environment, how you were reared, many things. But I'm definitely an I, enthusiasm, things like that, motivated by social recognition, group activities, and friendly relationships. Now, I will tell you this. I'm an introvert, although I, talk a lot, but I can be in a group and I can engage people, but as an introvert, which I just learned that I was a couple years ago, when I'm done, I get excited about going home and doing nothing and staring at the walls. I recharge my battery by going back, retreating. So, whereas, I'm not necessarily motivated by group activities. Um, but again, somebody else may be. So again, you may not agree with all of these, but I found them to be overall on point. Fears are social rejection, disapproval, loss of influence, being ignored. You will notice charm, enthusiasm, sociability, optimism, talkativeness, and our limitations are impulsiveness, lack of follow through, and disorganization. I will tell you through training and experience and different types of just different work experiences and experiences in general. I'm pretty good on my follow through and organization. So again, even though that might be our default personality, again, with training, we can improve on any of these things. Are there any eyes on? Anybody an eye except for me? Other than me? Let me ask you this as we're going through them. Do you know a D or an I? Do any D's or I's come to mind? Can anybody point, you don't have to say their name, but pinpoint like, such and such is surely a D or an I. When I'm coaching people, what I'll do is I'll ask them, do you know anybody in that particular category? And I'll ask them to write down their names. Okay. Now we have the bottom half, no less important, but we have the S's. Now I will say this. The I's and the S's are complete opposites in personality. They may have similarities. I know some S's where we have a similar personality, but at the end, when it all comes down to looking at this, I now understand the differences. Oh, your business partner is an I. I got more questions in a second. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to ask you something, Miss Kelly, in a second. Okay, so S's stand for steadiness, and their priorities are giving support, maintaining stability, enjoying collaboration. They're motivated by stable environment, sincere appreciation, cooperation, and opportunities to help. Their fears are loss of stability, change, loss of harmony, offending others. You will notice patience, team player, calm approach, good listener, humility. Limitations, overly accommodating, tendency to avoid change, and indecisiveness. Are there any S's here? Okay. Can you think of somebody that is an S as we do that? Ah, thank you. All right, have one S on here. Now I'm going to use myself as an example again. And I'm going to ask you all this as well. Feel free to share or not. It's okay. Now, based on what we've covered so far, like I said, I's and S's, there are certain things that we're just total opposite on. Now, I will say that as an I, when I think about those I may have had direct conflict with or offended, it may have been an S, depending on the situation. Not because I won't say rude, but let's go back to the top half of this. D's and I's are active, fast-paced, assertive, and dynamic. So I can pretty much move with some change and do different things. I'm moving real quick. I'm trying to, slow down and, in my approach to things. And, some things they depend on you to move a little fast, but not everything. So, can you imagine? Have you ever been in a group, maybe with people or working with people, and you're ready to roll, whether you're a D or I, and somebody that's an S may say, maybe they're slower in their approach. They have to think it through. Or maybe they don't like the change altogether, even if it's needed. Or maybe they get in, a little bit overwhelmed. Or as an I, like I said, we're expressive. So some of us, like I'm expressive, I talk loud, that's part of my DNA. But when I get excited in a good, even in a good manner, I may, my voice may raise. Or if I'm shocked, my voice will, I'll raise my voice. Now imagine if I'm talking to an S and maybe we're having a disagreement, or maybe I'm asking a question, maybe it's an uncomfortable situation. I have actually thrown off somebody that was a couple people that were S's because I'm like, you mean you upset with me? Well, I didn't mean it that way. Let's talk about it. But by then they have shut down my tone, even though I don't mean any harm. And they're like, I can't deal with that. Then they shut down. Let me see. I got a comment right here. Oh, I like that. I shadow D and S. D is my business personality. My spiritual personality in church work is an S. So you will probably be a DS, and thank you for sharing that. So, and like I said, people can be a combination of those things. And depending on the situation, you may have to be more of a D, depending on, the people around you. There are certain personalities that trigger other personalities. Like, I've coached some people that were C or S's, and the D's just trigger them real bad. Um, and of course, everybody's like with eyes, we're like, oh, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Asking touchy feely questions to make sure everybody's okay, because we like for everybody to get along. But just because somebody doesn't use that approach doesn't necessarily mean they're rude. But it can trigger people. Um, it's not a good or a bad thing, it's a thing, but understanding ourselves and what our triggers are is also important. Now, we won't cover this in this session, but along with the DiSC assessment, I am also a certified emotional intelligence practitioner. So when you talk about emotional intelligence and DiSC and personalities, when I mention triggers, there are activities I will incorporate with my clients on top of, okay, what are your triggers based off of your DiSC personality? And that way, when you come into encounter a particular personality, you already know how to deal with that. So an example of, if you're an S and you're triggered by certain things that I's do or D's, then we work through your assessment to say, okay, let's turn to working with a D, or motivating a D, or communicating with a D. And it's not about changing who you are as a person, but again, it's about understanding yourself better, better communication. If you're building a team, how to understand different members on your team, and to be able to diffuse conflict or work through it properly, productively. Um, I have also, since I like I said, I've been told, again, have close relationships. One with an S, it's like, you know what? You want me to give your answer where you want me to give your answer, when you want me to give you an answer. I'm like, yeah. Sometimes I can, depending on what it is, I'm processing really quick and then I'm waiting on you to process, but that's not how it really works. So again, think about who your opposite personality is. And that's interesting. So anyway, those are the S's. And again, you may be a combination of both. All right. Then lastly, C. Conscientious. Their priorities are ensuring accuracy, maintaining stability, challenging assumptions. They're motivated by opportunities to use expertise or gain knowledge, attention to quality. Fears are criticism, slipshod methods, and being wrong. You will notice precision, analysis, skepticism, reserved and quiet. Their limitations are overly critical tendency to overanalyze, isolate self. So also when you think about certain professions, There may be certain personalities that are more likely to be in certain professions. For example, you may have, you may know some people who are C's and they're in IT. That doesn't mean all C's are in IT, but when you look at those things, it gives you an insight. Now, is there any question about any of that? But I just wanted to introduce it to you. If you take the DiSC assessment, you will receive an overview, like, something like this is what we use, everything DiSC. But this is an overview, just to introduce the personality types. All right. Now we're going to get into the benefits of DiSC in team building, which I pretty much already mentioned, which are enhancing communication. You can tailor your communication based on your personality types, It improves collaboration, understanding strengths and weaknesses of team members, reduces conflict. You can anticipate and mitigate potential misunderstandings, and it boosts productivity, aligning tasks with team member strength. All right. Now, let's think about this. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's go back to D. We want to look at some ways how you might be able to interact with the D more productively. Or if you're a D, then maybe again, this will give you some insight on your own personality as well. Characteristics, as we mentioned before: direct, assertive, and results-oriented. Conflict approach. Dominant individuals tend to be straightforward, and they may also prefer to confront issues head on. They value efficiency and solutions over feelings. Okay. So as an I'm very detailed. I also tell a story or answer a question based on how I learn, which is very detailed. And so if I'm talking to someone with a D personality, I have to remember to start with not the details first, but the bottom line first, then work your way in. The bottom line first, and then you add your details. Now, what's interesting is, as I mentioned before, sometimes I exhibit D tendencies depending on what it is. Again, depending on what leadership role I'm in, what I'm doing, what the time constraints are, or just how I feel. Am I tired or what have you? I may say, okay, so what's the bottom line here? What are you trying to say? So I can't, that kind of thing. So again, it doesn't mean that you don't shift into different personality types. One may be more dominant than the other depending on the situation. So just something to think about. So also they value efficiency and solutions over feelings. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people, but they're like, if you're a person that you really want them to understand, I feel, how you feeling. So then you have to frame what you're saying in the way that they can understand and interpret it. So how to deal: be concise and focus on the facts, which I've already said. Offer solutions and focus on how to achieve goals. Avoid beating around the bush, get to the point. Don't take their directness personally. It's usually about resolving the issue quickly. Any thoughts about that for somebody that may be a D, or you find yourself sometimes bumping heads with a D? Any thoughts?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So tell me, if you don't mind, what part do you connect with this, or that you're like,
So the characteristics are all me, and I didn't grow up this way. Well, no, let me go back and say I've always been direct, to the point to where I remember as a little girl getting popped in the mouth because I was so direct. Now, the conflict approach, down to where it says we value efficiency and solutions. Of course, as I became older, not even in high school, I didn't even recognize this, but as I moved into the college world and the corporate world, I noticed that I was always about, it's taking you a little too long. Why is it taking you so long? Because I could always see the end before the average person. And solutions, I would always find myself being in a meeting and not waiting on the team to say what they thought it should be. I was always the first one to say, "Oh, I know how to fix that," or
Mhm.
"I know how this can end up. Let's blah blah blah." And even in, where it was a team project or something new rolling out, like the systems, when new systems roll out, it was always a matter of one or two things. The way I was received was either Kelly's a know-it-all, or call Kelly, she knows the answer.
Ah.
And both of them can be somewhat uncomfortable to a team,
Mm.
okay? Since we're talking about team building, either one can be uncomfortable. So what I've learned to do, dropping down to this, how to deal, I had to teach people how to deal with me, okay? I elevate the person I'm engaging with because I say to them, especially if they're new, correct? Now, if we've been working together for a year, you pretty much know who I am. But if they're new, I always say to them up front, straight up front, I said, look, I'm not politically correct on a lot of things, but I mean no harm. Just what you said. I mean no harm. I just want to push the ball down the court. Let's go. So if there's anything you don't understand, then slow me down and reel me in. But I don't mean any harm. I'm just ready to rock and roll. And I say that straight up front.
Thank you for your transparency. And and that's the thing. You made me think about a conversation I had with an S, and I was like, going back to the demanding, okay, an answer, right there, instead of that person needing to think about it. And I was like, when they told me that, I said, you know what, you were exactly right. So how about I did the same, similar. I said, okay, then you know what? Let me know when I'm doing that. Please make me aware. Because
Mhm,
you're absolutely right. And I didn't mean any harm, but my tone in that instance was off and some other things. And I appreciate that. And that's the thing with, this also promotes self-awareness as well. So I
yes.
appreciate your honesty, because a lot of times, it's not to point out faults in other people, but as we learn about these things, that allows us to be more self-aware, which falls along the lines of emotional intelligence. We all have levels
Mhm,
of emotional intelligence, but we operate at higher levels. Um, self-awareness is one of those core competencies of emotional
mhm,
intelligence. So being aware of not just ourselves, but also others. I
mhm.
appreciate you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, ma'am. I've even taken it to the point of, and I didn't learn this till this year. This year, I signed my email in the spirit of kindness, solution, and progress because I got tired. I was working at an autistic school, and that's a whole different type personality group working with that population. And I figured out if I put that right, it
Mhm.
would reduce, by the time they got to the bottom of my email, it would reduce maybe some overstated or understated tone that we read into each person's email anyway, right? And that's what I did to protect myself because I said I have to keep that up front. I don't mean any harm, it's about solution.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Thank you again. And again, we're all growing. As long as we're alive, we should be growing. So, I just learned these tools a couple years ago myself. So, we're all growing. But, thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody else thoughts? Anybody the total opposite, or anything? Any thoughts as we move to the next one? Okay. Now again, y'all, on our best day, depending on what's going on, we have these tools and we won't always do the best with them. But again, it's about being aware. And I think, a lot of times too, sometimes depending on your personality type, it just might be better to shut down. But not like I'm encouraging y'all to pick fights or whatever, but it is really good to be able to communicate with people. And then it gives you a chance to try to make it right or communicate your side or hear from them. Um, but again, these are just tools that we use, and we do the best we can. And when we fall short, we get back up and try it again and see what we can learn from it. All right, let's look at the I's. As we mentioned before, characteristics are outgoing, enthusiastic, and relationship oriented. Conflict approach. Those with an influence style may seek to avoid conflict or try to diffuse tension with humor or charm. They value harmony in relationships. Now, I have to admit, I'm actually trying to do less of this now. God knows I try to be the peacemaker. I have tried in so many instances to get in the, maybe I'm a part of something, but then I get in the middle of it and try to make everybody feel better. That is quite draining. And as I get older, I'm like, that is not good for your health all the time. Now, it's one thing if you're working in a team to work together to try to, to try to see all sides of it. But there are certain situations where maybe there needs to be a little bit a conflict brewing. I was always the type that was, let's try to prevent this, and I want everybody to get along. But sometimes maybe it just needs to get a little muddy and a little dirty for people to work things out. But I was always like trying to prevent that. As a child, I was also more of probably an S, and I still do have S tendencies that work in me, but because of experiences and different things, it has pushed some other types of some of the things that may be more dominant now. But there are still times where I'm like, ooh, I don't want to say anything, but I know through experience that that's not it. But my dominant is I. So let's look at this. How to deal, keep the conversation positive and open. Um, Acknowledge their feelings and focus on finding a win-win solution. Be personable and use examples to help them understand the impact of the conflict. Encourage open dialogue, but steer back to the issue if they get too off topic. Yes, I've been guilty of getting off the topic, and then I'm like, now where was I going with this? And I get stuck in the weeds. I don't let it dominate my presentation or what have you, have an illustration. But again, natural storyteller, some of it's DNA, some of it's the way I learn process. Any thoughts from an I or somebody who has direct conflict with eyes or knows some eyes? Okay.
Well,
Steadiness. I'm sorry,
wait,
go ahead.
stay quiet.
What you say, Miss Kelly?
Since everyone's quiet,
Yeah, go
um,
ahead. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
so my business partner is an I, and what I have learned is two things. I tell her before we go into public, I said, now look, we gonna have a code word when you get to running down the road too much, because she's enthusiastic. And she always wants to say, I know you, I remember you, and didn't we meet at the such and such and such and such? And really, that's not like the time or place to kind of make that backstory connection, And matter of fact, it happened today because I was with her half the day today before getting on here. And I had to do it. I said, now this meeting, we're going to go straight in and we're going to go straight to the point because we only have 30 minutes. So I've learned code words to slow her down, reel her in, and then like a prep talk before we get into either meeting, Zoom, or public appointments.
Mm-hmm. I like that because it's about a strategy and approach and keeping the lines. I like how you keep the lines of communication open. I like that. How's that working?
Oh, she laughs at it because she's seeing herself.
So
Yeah,
the code
she's like,
words work.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it comes with practice too. Like I said, depending on what I'm doing, I may come off a little as a D because of certain things. If I'm like I said, if I'm doing my workshops or trainings or I'm going into it, like I said, I may have my excitable moments. But then it's like, okay, I got to get this done. So trying to have a balance is quite interesting with all of our personalities. And so, but I like the fact again, it's about team building. So all of these personalities have positive traits and things we have to work on. But I like the code word and the and you know, because again, your audience, and it sounds like it. How long y'all been working together?
just this past year. It hadn't even been a whole year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another comment here. I also have to practice being quiet and not go places where I know people. Well, I get excited when I know folk too. But again, what's interesting about business though, depending on, I may know somebody, and if they've been a client or something, I'm not gonna tell it. Because it's confidential. Now sometimes I'm gonna be like, you look real familiar. Um, and then leave it there. And depending on what it is, if I'm really itching to know, or if they say something, oh yeah, yeah, I met you from such and such, but I may go and be like, are you such and such? But yeah, but what VJ, what are you, what's your personality type? I'm curious to know. You an I too? Oh, you're S. Okay. See, so again, this goes to show you that, we all can exhibit different types. She's an S. Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So again, we have some basic strategies here. Steadiness, the S's. Calm, cooperative, and supportive. Conflict approach, steady individuals tend to avoid conflict and may become uncomfortable with confrontation. They value stability and consistency. And again, I've had situations where I find out somebody might have been a little upset. And then I want to go find out, like, what's going on? Let's talk about it. But again, just my voice, they may start off and then it's like, where I'm like, well, I haven't done anything wrong. What's wrong with you? But all the extras already. But I want to talk it out. I want to, but that's not the approach. If you want to, again, somebody that's calm and steady, you have to be calm and steady too. And it's not to say that, again, having to change who you are, but it's about an awareness. So I know I have started practicing, okay, this is how I need to do this. And again, not every situation you'll be able to do it perfectly, but to be able to say, okay, I need to, even if it's something positive, just try to, stay cool a little bit. Don't let all the extra, because again, some people who are, like I said, enthusiastic like me, it throws people off, or they look at you a little suspicious. But so again, just the awareness of it. And we don't go into a room knowing who everybody is, but you can sort of pick up on, people as you're, talking to them and things like that, or how they respond to you. Now, I do have this personality that makes people laugh, so I can get people to giggle across the board, regardless of their personality. I'm not trying, but that's just how it is. So, again, remember they value stability and consistency. So if you have some S's on your team, they may need a little while to process. So how do you deal with them? Be patient and create a safe space for them to express their feelings. Again, they will shut down and you will never know that they are upset with you a lot of the times, or that they're upset or feeling some kind of way. They'll just hold their feelings in, and that's not good either. So emphasize the importance of the relationship and mutual respect. Avoid pressuring them for quick decisions, which I just mentioned. And like I said, in the workplace, sometimes, or whatever you're doing, you may not have a lot of time. But again, how do you develop your team to incorporate all your personalities? Allow them time to process. Reassure them that the conflict can be resolved without causing harm to relationships. Any thoughts about the S's? Oh, I got a comment here. Okay, thanks. All right. All right. Any thoughts here? Anybody been in direct conflict with S's outside of me? And conflict, like I said, doesn't necessarily mean you got in a fist fight or having a nasty argument, but it can mean, if you've ever had, for those that may move faster pace at the top of the chart, where people seem to, maybe people, it's not that they don't like change, but it's just I need time to process it, um even if they know change, needs to occur. Any thoughts? And lastly, C's. Characteristics: analytical, detail oriented, and quality focused. Their conflict approach: they're conscientious individuals, may focus on the logic and accuracy of the situation. They value correctness and adhere to the rules. How to deal: provide data, facts and evidence to support your points. Be logical and precise in your communication. Avoid being overly emotional. Stick to the facts and the process. Respect their need for structure and allow them to propose solutions that are thorough and well thought out. So if you kind of a fly by the seat of your pants person, or a quick, you moving quick, or if you want to try to convince, or you want to lead in with your feelings, it's not that they don't care. I'm gonna say, but they need to understand. You need to talk to them in their language with facts, evidence, logic. What do y'all think about that? Any C's or any C's, you know? Anybody ever try to get a C to understand their feelings?
My twin sister.
Oh, wow. How about that? So y'all are not identical. I mean, I know you're two different people. You know, sometimes I have a set of twin brothers, and you know, I was like, y'all were mad at each other. You're twins. Y'all not supposed to do that. I thought y'all was, hey.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Oh, so do you find some of these things to be true?
You're
About the
asking
C
me?
personality. Yes, about the C personality.
Oh, yes.
Ooh,
Oh,
wait.
yes. Let's see. Uh, I mean, pretty much all of them.
Mm.
Yeah, pretty much all of them.
So how do you
Like,
get her to understand your feelings?
so because, okay, so we're different. We're different. So because we have a older sister who is head chaplain, or doctor in chaplain, right?
Mm-hmm.
She, if we have a big blowout, we tend to call her, and she walks us through as though we're clients, right? Like we're in therapy. So that's how we deal with each other when it gets out of control. Like she says, you really hurt my feelings, and I appreciate that mess. We call my sister. And so then it's like we have our session, but together, I mean, it's like the cup has to be running over, the offended cup has to be running over before she even says anything about how she truly felt.
Mm.
But because I guess because I know that she's like that, this how to deal these four dots right here, I am more of the last one here where it says respect the need for structure and
Mm.
allow them to propose through, thorough and well thought out. I try to not talk so fast in my assertiveness, and I try to hear what she's saying, and then I just pick the piece that I know needs to be corrected, where it says provide data and facts and evidence, and I'll say, you're saying that on one end, but it's not true on the other end. So that I've slowed down. I can't be so direct. I just slow down. She'll say, you didn't let me finish. I'll slow down. So that's kind of how I deal with her if we don't have my sister around.
I love it. Thank you. That is excellent. I saw Denise comment. Yes, I'm sorry. Denise, were you saying yes to you knew some C's, or yes to you can relate to this? I'm sorry. I just wanted some clarity. Feel free to put your response in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself. Ah. Now what are you, Denise? Ah. Ah. Okay. All right. Okay. So see you all, I didn't have a personal meeting with everybody on here to try to, try to talk about what you are beforehand. I had no clue. But this is really good. And like I said, what I do like about the assessment is because there are two types that I offer. There's a management one, and then there's an employee one, but you can use them regardless of your setting. So whether that's in a religious organization, community organization, and a business, setting in general, or even among family and friends, if you're in a leadership position, like with my management assessments, it will talk about how to motivate your teams of the different personalities. You can literally flip to the page where it says how to motivate a C, how to, engage with a D, how to do this, this, and this around how you want to motivate them to work and do other things versus if you're an employee or let's say you're not necessarily in a leadership role, then how to relate to your other peers around you that have the different personalities. So like when I'm coaching sometime and with clients and we've moved on to something else, but the first thing we're going to do is go through that assessment. But maybe a month or two later, they bring up somebody and I'm like, okay, out of curiosity, what do you think they are? Then I'll pull up their DiSC assessment on the screen and we talk about that. And then we go back to, okay, now how can we approach this along with the other tools? Like I said, I have other tools I'm using in conjunction with that. But yeah, that's really yeah, it's really good. And also with the leadership one or the management one, it also talks to you about how to deal with other leaders or managers in that. So how to, communicate with other managers, so again, you have a couple different types that will allow you to do different kinds of things. So I love it because it's a nice little reference point. But yes, any other thoughts? So again, I wanted to just introduce this to some and again just give you an illustration of some of the ways this can be used, but it's a very powerful tool. I have informally coached. My mom was I did a session last week, an in-person session, and with a few people talking the same presentation. So I like to pick on my mom. So I was sharing with them, she was there. There was a situation where on Mother's Day, well, it didn't occur on Mother's Day, but Mother's Day a couple years ago, we were sitting and talking at my table. We were having dinner, and it was a situation that was bothering her. And I was like, she didn't bring it up at the time, but it was just laid on my heart. I was like, hey, let's do you mind if I just, she has never taken a DiSC assessment, but I showed her the beginning chart, the first chart that I showed you all with the different personalities. And I was like, based on, this, what do you think you are? Based on what this other person is, what do you think they are? And so she was going to set up a meeting to talk to them. And I said, if you set up a meeting, you need to have an end goal in mind, not going in to just say, pouring out your feelings and how they made you feel. I said, your feelings are important. I said, but you have to have a goal for the meeting. What is the goal? Do you want this person to understand this, that, or the other? It can't be you going to convince them that they're wrong, that you want them to change. But I told her there is power. You have the ability to set the temperature of the room with these skills. So by I was treading on thin ice, y'all, because she'll give me a look where I'm like, I know I need to leave her alone, but I've got to do this. So she she entertained me for about 20 minutes. But at the end of it, she had notes in her phone. And when she had that meeting with that person actually admitted at the end that they have certain kind of looks they give people, different kinds of things. But it was when I tell you, I said the Lord moved. But I've seen it. That doesn't mean you can change a person, but what it does mean is again, where something could have been a hostile environment or very tense, you can easily, come in at an angle of, but you got to have the goals, rehearsing what is it that you want to, accomplish. And again, your feelings are important, but depending on who that person is, you got to start with how you need to. And I had a clue of, idea of what that person was. They had never taken the DiSC assessment, but just by me interacting with them, I felt like what they were. And, so based off of that, and she agreed, I was like, this is how you have to do that. And so that was a very positive meeting. And I could just see the change in her as it relates to dealing with that person moving forward. Now, that don't mean people won't get on your nerves, but what it means is, you have a tool to come back to. And like I said, I just did that in a brief little overview with her. So what's next? So think about what were some of the key takeaways or the insights from this session. Does anybody have anything that might have enlightened them or something that they made them think about or made them aware of? Feel free to share or put in the chat. Well, as you're thinking. How will you apply some of these insights? I'm gonna throw all these questions out here. So, what were some of the key insights or takeaways if you had any? How will you apply some of these insights in your daily life? Um, if you're interested in taking a DiSC assessment, chat with me and we can talk about how to get you set up. And, I ask that you share this information with others because it's a very powerful tool. Um, so if you have any questions, feel free to email me, call me, or you can text me, or you can actually, if you scan this QR scan code, that's actually my digital business card. So it has my information on there. It also has my nonprofit information on there. And it has my social media handles as well. All right. It helps you to communicate and listen to others better. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And you're most welcome. Thank you for jumping on and taking time out. Just a better approach to working with others. Thank you, Denise. Thank you. Yeah. And like I said, y'all, we'll all miss the boat sometimes. And like I said, life's happening. You may be tired, but you know how to, okay. Or sometimes, depending on a person's personality, you may sometimes if people might accuse you of, oh, they're not friendly, or oh, maybe, oh, they standoffish, or maybe it's just their personality. So again, I just want to thank you all, for taking out time to participate. I also want to let you know about some, like I said, if you're interested in any of the other topics that I offer that I mentioned before, I actually have an ongoing finance academy for entrepreneurs that's on my website. I have like some, they were live back in a couple months ago of some financial topics where I was teaching online and on the basics of understanding financial statements, how to manage your personal finances as a business owner, how to improve your credit scores. Those might have been those three. And so feel free to check those things out as well. I've had that up there for a good while, have them at $25 each, teaching for about an hour. Well, I hope you feel better. Thank you for joining us, Miss Edith. But yes, I look forward to hearing from you, and I thank you for taking time to come out. So